At the U.S.-Mexico border in Nogales, Arizona, American border agents say there may be no greater concentration of illegal narcotics in one place than those smuggled through their border post from just over this fence in Nogales, Mexico. Every imaginable drug for export, like those sold locally in pill form or individually wrapped for a quick fix or high. Sold by shopkeepers like this in the back of his store, who asked me not to show his face. Says he sells them to help feed his family. That's crystal meth?
Crystal
How
meth.
much is the crystal meth?
This is a $20 rock.
That's cocaine? That's crack?
That's crack.
And how much is that?
That's $10. And this is pure coke. That's coke.
That's just pure powder coke.
Powder coke. That's what it is.
You got weed?
That's weed right there.
Heroin, or black tar, is a local favorite.
Black tar, $40.
That's your black tar heroin?
Yes.
He says the amount of drugs available locally are nothing compared to the massive amounts smuggled into the U.S. each year. How is it getting across?
Oh, it's many ways. Yes.
One way in so-called super tunnels like this one, recently discovered by U.S. authorities running underground from Tijuana, Mexico to San Diego, California. Several tons of marijuana and cocaine confiscated. And back here in Arizona, U.S. border agents have caught drug smugglers using storm and sewage pipes under Main Street in the middle of downtown Nogales. And they just recently stopped a tractor-trailer truck trying to drive through the border here with 10 tons of marijuana worth $10 million, a record bust in Arizona. Drug cartels also pay working-class Mexicans to walk the drugs through the official pedestrian border crossing. Many caught and photographed by U.S. border agents each year. And now, rather alarmingly, with so many adults being caught, Mexico's drug cartels are increasingly recruiting school-aged children to sneak drugs across the border, says Vanessa Cartwright, a local deputy county attorney in Nogales who prosecutes them.
And what we're seeing is that they will utilize these kids to achieve that goal, who are bringing in just huge amounts of narcotics. Sometimes we see marijuana, but for the most part, it's methamphetamines, heroin, and cocaine.
It's the hard stuff.
It's the hard stuff. They will usually be wearing multiple undergarments, and the narcotics will actually be taped with duct tape or electrical tape to their bodies. We talk about how they're juveniles in kind of a real, literal sense, but they're really children.
The cartel, she says, recruiting the many Mexican-American kids here born to illegal immigrants on the U.S. side of the border, as well as kids who've moved back to Mexico with their parents who've been deported. The kids still holding their American citizenship documents and are able to move back and forth across the border legally quite easily. Like this 16-year-old high school student who we'll call Melissa, recently caught by U.S. Border Patrol agents with a kilo of heroin. She's facing up to 12 years in a U.S. prison. Melissa's American attorney allowing her to speak to CCTV if her face isn't shown.
I was in school with my classmates, and one of them called me to meet up. She started telling me about the smuggling across the border and asked me if I wanted to do it. She began to sweet-talk me, inducing me to first watch how others did it and how easy it seemed. They convinced me, and I ended up agreeing to it. The recruiter was a woman because they have to tell you where to hide the drug, which means they have to see your body. The woman in charge explains the process and where to hide the drug. Then they tell us we're paid when we return. They tell you at first the pay is $500, and then depending on how much you're willing to take with you, you'll get more money. They take advantage of your innocence. They never explain the risks of smuggling. They make sure to deceive you with their words in a way that seems like nothing bad can ever happen.
And nothing bad did happen at first, she says, as she successfully passed through this pedestrian border crossing like hundreds of kids do each day to go to school in Nogales, Arizona. Once across, she says she was then instructed to board one of the many privately run shuttle buses that transport passengers north to Tucson, Arizona. Tucson and Phoenix, further up the highway, are well-known distribution centers for Mexico's drug cartels. Once smugglers make it here, the drugs are transported to major cities across the United States. In tracing Melissa's route north, I boarded one such Tucson-bound shuttle bus with a concealed camera. The vehicle filled with passengers, including this young woman and young man sitting in front of me. 20 minutes into the trip is a U.S. Border Patrol checkpoint on the highway, where border agents routinely search shuttle buses like this one. The mood inside this bus seems rather tense. It's unknown if anyone aboard is smuggling narcotics. This border agent questions the young woman in front of me.
You ever been arrested before? No?
Everyone makes it through. But that was not the case when border police stopped Melissa's shuttle bus.
I was very nervous. I was so desperate when the police caught me that I didn't even know what I was doing. My mind went blank. They found drugs on my body. Heroin.
Being arrested was bad enough, she says. But then the drug cartels want to know what happened to their drugs.
But if they hold you responsible for the loss of the drugs, they will expect you to pay it back.
And the same applies when a kid gets busted attempting to carry cash from drug sales back to the cartels in Mexico.
And they put $100,000 inside.
In Melissa's case, the kilo of heroin she lost to authorities was worth around $50,000. Melissa, say prosecutors, is lucky she's still alive.
I think that she is extremely lucky. I think that these cartels, they don't play around. And, you know, the kids are not old enough to really comprehend what they're getting themselves into.
Vanessa Cartwright's boss, Santa Cruz County Attorney George Silva, born and raised in Nogales and with kids of his own, understands the dangers juveniles face from the cartels.
I do carry a gun with me to protect my family as well.
Having been threatened himself as the man responsible for prosecuting the cartel's young mules. Silva has had to actually write letters to smugglers' families for them to show the cartels threatening them with reprisals for drugs that have been confiscated.
The juveniles were being told, you cannot lose this load. If this load is intercepted, we will go after you, we will go after your family. If they end up losing their load, or law enforcement intercepts their load, the cartels want to see newspaper clippings, court documents, a police report to show that this in fact did occur. Like a permission slip or some type of excuse, it's absolutely amazing that we have to do those letters. They are that ruthless.
A ruthlessness, says Silva, that grips youths on both sides of the border. For example, on this night at a local Christian shelter in Nogales, Mexico that takes in Mexicans who've just been deported from the U.S. These young border crossers say cartels in many cases are no longer giving kids a choice to say no to smuggling drugs into the U.S. The new rules of the game essentially, if you want to cross into the U.S., you have to take drugs with you, says young Gabriel Sanchez.
You had to cross some drugs. You had to cross drugs.
You have to cross drugs if you want to get across.
Yeah.
That's what they say.
Yeah. And if you don't want it, you have to. You don't have any option.
And what if you say no?
You have to, because they tell you if you don't do it, we can kill you or we can find you family there.
These same kind of threats are what George Silva is hearing from young Mexican-American students he visits with on the U.S. side of the border.
We're gonna kill you. What do you do then?
If you're there and they have a gun and they're pointing at you, take whatever they're telling you, start going, but drive to Nogales City Hall, to the police department, and seek protection there.
If they don't go to the police and get caught with drugs, he tells them, a felony conviction for smuggling drugs will likely follow and could ruin their lives.
I go out and I tell the kids, look, if you have hard drugs, meth, heroin, cocaine, you're going to prison. Plain and simple.
If you're a juvenile.
If you're a juvenile. You know, kids are foolish. They don't think long term. You know, you flash that roll of money and tell them this is what you're going to make, and then they start thinking about the shoes, the clothes, the car. So think of taking advantage of our youth. That's exactly what these guys are doing. And they're counting on them being gullible and showing them, you know, a couple $100 and for them to say, all right, I like that. That's easy money. If you're prosecuted as an adult and you're still a juvenile, that's something that's going to haunt you forever. You're going to take that with you. I mean, when you're 35, 55 years old and they ask you on an application for college or for employment, have you ever been convicted of a felony? It's going to be yes. And the chances of you getting that job are slim to none.
Melissa's chances in life, she now tells her friends, greatly diminished after smuggling drugs for the cartels.
My parents were very disappointed because they never expected me to do anything like this. And now that I reflect back, I know that it was a huge mistake to do what I did. I was putting my future at risk for something that wasn't even worth it. Don't let a few dollars ruin your life.
I wish something could be done. You know, we're trying really hard to intercept this and to stop it, but it's not stopping.
The U.S. government's putting up all these fences, they're tightening up security, they say, and they're trying
to keep this from going across.
They're trying to stop.
But the thing is that people use it, you know what I mean? So
the shopkeeper who sells dope on the side says kids smuggling it to Americans has simply become a way of life in Mexico, where half the population lives below the poverty line.
So you got to look for other means of making money.
Right. And U.S. officials concede another reason so many kids are smuggling drugs across these days is because it's fairly easy, at the end of the day, to do so. Because there's simply no way each and every one of the hundreds who come through here every day can be thoroughly searched, with U.S. border agents here in Nogales mandated to move people through quickly and to keep commerce moving quickly through the Nogales border crossing. That includes the international trade hauled on freight trains protected by heavily armed Mexican border police on the Mexico side. $26 billion worth a year in fresh Mexican produce and automobiles and other manufactured goods crossing into the U.S. And as for the thousands of pedestrians crossing into the U.S. on any given day, border agents simply cannot check every one of them, says Joe Garcia, a federal investigator with the U.S. Department of Homeland Security.
There's a lot of pressure from congressmen, senators, and the commercial community to say, hey, you know, we need to somehow streamline this. So you can't check everyone. We'd like to, but we can't. You're going to get something through. I'd like to tell you that we have hardened the land borders sufficiently that nothing gets through. Well, that would be a bold-faced lie.
We have to find some way of stopping the drugs from coming into our country. Something needs to be done about the demand. So long as the demand exists in our country, people in other countries will find ways of getting that product into the U.S. because they're going to make money off of it. That's the driving force behind all of this. It's money and greed.
And Silva says when enough juveniles have been arrested and convicted and their lives destroyed, the cartels will undoubtedly shift to someone else to smuggle their drugs.
For example, we start hitting juveniles hard and going after them and sending them to prison. They shift. Now they start using pregnant young females. And then we start going after them. And then they shift. And they start using the elderly. Then we start, and it's just a cat and mouse game. The solution is education, and it starts with parents, with us. You know, the way we raise our kids, the way we talk to our kids, you know, what we tell them at home. But also the examples that we set for them. You know, that's extremely important. They're looking at us. And if we're out there consuming drugs, then...
Painful times, says Silva. And speaking of pain, even black market pain medications are increasingly being carried across the border by juvenile smugglers.
That's Vicodin.
That's a Vicodin? How much are the Vicodin?
They go for $7.
$7 for one?
Mm-hmm.
All right, what about the little one here?
That's a Percocet. They go for like $18 a piece.
Percocet, $18 a piece?
Mm-hmm.
If somebody's got depression, you even got Xanax.
Yeah.
The cartel's smuggling every imaginable drug into the U.S., preying on mere kids to help them get it there.